Hello, everyone. Last class we spoke about the argument for a creator versus randomness, and we really went heavily into the sciences, and we are now moving on to the question of religion. Now, we started with God because without God, religion would be meaningless, honestly meaningless. I once heard a sort of a very liberal rabbi saying, well, I don't know if the 10 plagues ever happened or the Jews ever split the sea, but even so, the morals, the lessons it teaches us are really valuable. I was in LA and this rabbi said this, and what are you talking about? If it didn't happen, then the Torah made it up. So then the Torah can't be trusted, because when you make up myths, when you make up legends and they didn't happen, so then you lose your reliability, you lose your credibility. So first there's God, creator, and then we're up to religion. Now, what I'm going to do, this is going to be a very sort of academic presentation, so follow. It's not going to be difficult to follow, but there are steps. So step number one, if there is religion, remember we said last week, either believer, agnostic, or atheist. We said atheist is the non-logical choice, because if you're an atheist, it means you know how to prove the lack of existence of something, and that's impossible. Agnostic means I'm not sure it's proven, and a believer said the burden of proof has been met according to my standards, and therefore I believe. And that's as valid as dating is. Like the burden of proof that this person would be a good wife for me, or this person would be a good husband. I don't know for sure, but the burden of proof, I dated enough, I've seen them enough, I'm ready to make my move. That's what a believer says, okay? So once you believe in a creator versus chaos, so now we have to approach it with an interesting exercise. And the exercise is, imagine you were a free agent. You know, basketball, baseball, they have free agents. Different teams can bid on their services. Imagine you're the free agent, and the teams that are bidding for your services are the different religions out there. Okay, it's just a thought exercise. Imagine you had not been born Jewish. You just came down from wherever, from Mars, the humans on Mars. You came down, and you're convinced that the world is created. And now you want to say, okay, so I want to get to know this creator. How do I do that? So if I'm a free agent, I am going to look at all the religions of the world, and there are about 2,000 of them, okay? Many religions. And I want to figure out, so which one should I subscribe to? And that's where we're up to in this talk. Which one? I'm a free agent? Which one? Now, all religions in the world are divided into two categories. There is philosophical religions and historical religions. It's good to know that. Philosophical religions don't make a claim to a historical truth. They're just philosophies. There's a philosophy about our place in the cosmos, our connection to Earth, our connection to each other. They're philosophies. And some of those philosophies may speak to us. We may meditate on them. They may ring true to us, but there's no way of knowing. They're a philosophy. And Taoism, a great example. Really, Buddhism is another example. It's literally a philosophy. You have Sadhguru, he sits underneath a tree, and he, after 7 days, he's enlightened, and he goes out there and he spreads his enlightenment to the world. Did anything happen? I don't know. It's a philosophy. Now, philosophies are okay. Like we all have our philosophies in life. However, when I have a philosophy about something, it may speak to me today, but 10 years from now, it doesn't speak to me. Like right now, where I am, imagine a student, and he's a backpacker, and he's backpacking across Europe, and then he ends up in Asia, and he ends up in Tibet, and ends up in an ashram, and he hears his philosophy on life, and he's feeling it, he's meditating, he's feeling tingly, he's feeling connected. Maybe in 10 years from now, when he's got a family and kids, the philosophy is not going to do it for him. The danger of a philosophy is it doesn't have a truth to lean back on. So if I am looking for truth in religion, all philosophical religions are always come in second place because there's no way of knowing if it's true. Now, what's the other category, and how would I know that that's true? So the other category of religions are called historical religions. And those religions work like this. Every one of them makes a claim. Now, they all start off with 4 steps, and we're going to get to the claim. Claim is going to be step 4. So listen carefully. Every historical religion has 4 steps. Step number 1, that we are created. We're not a random accident. We're a product of creation. That's step number 1. Step number 2, we're created by a creator. Makes a lot of sense. If we're created, then something had to do with the creation, the creating, so we're created by a creator. Step number 3, we're created by a creator for a purpose. We weren't created for no purpose. We weren't created just on a whim. There was some purposefulness. There was some goal that the creator had in mind when the creator created. And by the way, it's a logical step, because everything that at least we know, and it could be, we say a deity works differently, but everything that we understand about the creative process is that creativeness usually comes from someone or something trying to accomplish something. So even if you, for example, take a Jackson Pollock painting, which just looks like spritzes on the canvas, if you ask them, they'll say, oh, wow, my kid could do that, right? Why is that worth, $40 million? No, your kid can't do it. There's something going on here. He has a purpose, whether it's rage or love or the blues, there's something there. When I see something, there's a purpose. So every religion, Islam, Christianity, Mormons, you name it, everyone agrees to the first 3 steps that we just mentioned. Now comes step number 4. And here's where the whole thing falls apart. Step number 4 is we're created by a creator for a purpose. And at some point in time, the creator told the creations what that purpose is. That's the number 4. At some point in time, the purpose was told. Now, by the way, that's also a logical step, because when something is, for example, gifted to someone else, usually if the thing is a difficult thing to understand, you'll explain exactly what the purpose is. So for example, if I am going to donate a computer to sort of a more primitive country in some backwater place in Africa, and they've never seen a computer, I'm not just gonna say, here you go, guys, enjoy. I'll say, no, you know what this can do? This can help you, it can connect you to the internet. This can actually figure out how many people you have. It can take a census. There's a lot of things that it can do. And the creator or the gifter will tell the creations or the people who are benefiting what the creation's all about. And that's step number 4. All religions agree with the first 3. All historical religions agree with the first 3. And the step 4 of historical religions, that's where it all blows apart. Every religion that differs with every other religion is differing on the step 4. And you, my dear friends who are watching today, the free agents that you are, all you have to do is figure out whether the step 4 is plausible or probably not plausible. That's all you need to do. Is the step 4 likely, or are there other explanations for the step 4? If the step 4 is not so likely, the religion falls apart. It falls apart, and I don't have to read their holy books, and I don't have to practice their holy customs. All I need to do, people say, oh, Rabbi, how am I ever gonna know what the correct religion is? After all, there are so many out there. I think I'm gonna spend all my life trying and testing. I say, no, you don't need to. Not necessary. Look, if it's philosophy, relegate it. There's no way to prove it. Even if I built a time machine that I just said before you can't build, even if I did, and I went back, I would see nothing. In a historical religion, if I went back in the time machine, I would actually see the step 4. At what point did the Creator tell the creations what it's all about? There was an incident. That's why they're called historical. They're called historical religions because there's an incident that took place that told the creations what the Creator is. There was a handoff, and that's the step 4. And the question is the handoff, is it convincing or is it not so convincing? If it's not convincing, I don't need to read the holy books. There's nothing to see. If I'm not convinced, and by the way, the fact that something happened thousands of years ago makes it worse, not better. Because people were more primitive then, right? They didn't understand how science works. So I'm gonna look at the step 4. So what we need to do is something that can be viewed as not politically correct. So don't view it that way. This is a very, very important exercise that we need to do because I'm giving you a tool that you're gonna give over to your friends and that you're gonna give over to your kids. My kids all know this. I'm giving you the tool of how to analyze the step 4 of each religion. And I'll just take a few of the more popular ones. And as free agents, you and I will see whether the conclusion that they came to is one that mandatorily obligates us to say, wow, that's truth, or whether there are other explanations. Let's take the Mormon religion. You're gonna tell me whether you're convinced of the step 4. That's all you need to do. So the step 4 in Mormonism, basic story, there is a fellow, he's Joseph Smith, and he is at home, he sees a great light, an angel comes to his house, angel's full of light, and the angel says that he has a message from Jesus, that he is the last gospel, and this gospel is given over from Jesus to the American Indians that came from the tribe of Dan, the Israeli tribe, and therefore he should go and spread the ideas of this last gospel that is being given over to Joseph Smith. By the way, that's in the 1800s, 1830s, 1840s. So we're going back about a little less than 200 years. So where is that gospel that Joseph Smith, that the angel Moroni, where is the angel Moroni telling him to go? He said, go to Mount Cumorah. It's a mountain upstate New York, and you're going to be able to dig up and you'll find a gold plate or gold plates. And the gold plates are the solid gold. They're going to be written in a form of ancient hieroglyphics, and these ancient form of hieroglyphics will be impossible for you to read. But luckily, says Angel Moroni, where you dig up these gold plates, there's also going to be something called a Seer Stone. And that Seer Stone, if you look through the Seer Stone, it will translate the words to you. So Joseph Smith finally is convinced. He goes to this mountain, digs up the gold plates and the Seer Stone. He calls over a friend. He says, wow, I just got the last Gospels of Jesus. I'm going to read them to you. You write it down. But the angel commanded me, don't show these gold plates to anyone. Not let us show them to anyone. So he takes like a basket and he puts these gold plates in it. He covers himself over with a towel, looks through the Seer Stones, and he begins to dictate to this neighbor the last Gospels of Jesus. The neighbor comes home with all these papers that were just dictated to him. He says it to his wife. He says, wow, our neighbor just came back with these Gospels from Angel Moroni. And his wife says, blasphemy. She takes the papers, throws them into the fire. He comes back to Joseph Smith and said, I don't know how to tell you this, but my wife burnt them up. He said, no worries, we'll do it again, no worries. And as he's doing it again, the dictation's coming out different than the first time. It's not the same words. So the neighbor who's writing it down says, this is different. So Joseph Smith says, well, because your wife sinned, so the words have reconfigured themselves. Anyways, he ended up having to destroy the gold plate. So he said his father saw them, his brother saw them. If you look at the beginning of the Book of Mormon, his mishpacha saw them, but no one else was allowed to see them. And based on that, the Mormon religion came out. Now, that's the step 4. So could it have happened? Perhaps. Could Angel Moroni, whoever that is, have come over to Joseph Smith and given him these things and given the gold plates that no one was allowed to see and he destroyed them beforehand? Maybe. It's one of the possibilities. You and I, as free agents, we're not buying. I don't see anything that corners me into believing it. I didn't see the gold plates, and even, by the way, even if I saw gold plates, would I be convinced? Even if I saw gold plates with scribbles on them, would that convince me that it was God? And believe it or not, this is not even what we call bashing Mormons, because I'm going to be doing this to everyone. Everyone's fair game today. All I'm doing is I'm saying their step 4, that revelation, that handoff, the handoff that the entire religion relies on for its truth is not, its veracity is not beyond reproach. There are other possibilities. Even if I saw gold plates, maybe gold exists, writing exists. Even if there were gold plates, maybe he wrote them. It wouldn't prove it. And therefore, I'm not going to change my life based on this guy, Joseph Smith, is saying that Angel Moroni came to him. The step 4 is weak. That's the point. Let's go to Islam, okay? Our dear cousins, our dear wonderful cousins, okay? So in Islam, what's the step 4? Muhammad goes into a cave, and in the cave, Angel Gabriel appears to him and says, this is the prophecy from God. There were many prophets before you. Musa, who was Moshe, Abraham, and you are the final prophet, says Angel Gabriel, go and spread my word. Okay? And then that's it. Now, that's step 4. That's a very easy to understand step 4. Probably one of the easiest in all of religion. Did that happen? Maybe. It's a possibility. Am I cornered into believing that this, he was illiterate in his own words, he was illiterate, that this illiterate person was, that Angel Gabriel appeared to him the way that he says it, and from now on you have to eat halal meat, and Sharia law is in place. Am I convinced that he had a vision in a cave? It's possible he did. It's possible. But again, those same possibilities, maybe he was delusional. Maybe he ate a spicy burrito and then fell asleep and had a funky dream. Maybe he smoked hashish. there are so many possibilities that I am not going to invest my life, because your step 4 is rife with question marks. That's the step 4. Grand total, 1.5 billion Muslims rely on the vision of a man in a cave. That's the step 4. I'm not convinced. Is anyone here convinced? If that happened today, a guy came out of a cave and says, wow, Angel Kukuriku came to me and said, America has to start, no more electricity. Is everyone going to turn off their computers? You say Angel Kukuriku? The fact that it happened 1,400 years ago doesn't make it any better. Okay, so let's just put it aside. Now, maybe there's nothing better out there. Maybe that's just how we have to leap. Maybe we have no choice. But we're still looking at the step 4. Let's say Christianity, because that's another big one, and then we'll flip to Judaism, and then we're going to have some sort of an eye-opening idea of what a step 4 is supposed to look like, okay? What's a step 4 in Christianity? Now, it's a strange thing, because, I grew up I was born in Cincinnati, Ohio, grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, lived in LA, lived in New York, and I am surrounded by Christianness. I'm surrounded. And unfortunately, so is everyone that I know. And we know so much about Christianity. You know, if I've done this with my students, I say, okay, so Santa, where does he live? And we know where he lives. And we know who works for him, who works for Santa, and what's his wife's name, and what's his mode of transportation, and how does he enter our home, and what does he know, and what kind of list does he make, on and on. Like, we know all this stuff. It's just like bubbling in our heads. But then if we were to ask, okay, so who is Moshe's brother and sister? Well, we could be, we're a little bit foggy about that. But we know all about Santa. That's what it means to be literally surrounded in a Christian culture. That's where Ashkenazi comes from, by the way. Sephardim came as a result of opposing Islam to offset Islam, and Ashkenazi came as a way to offset Christianity, because it's everywhere. It's everywhere wherever we go. So, what's their step 4? Interestingly enough, Christianity's step 4 is among the weakest out there. It's just gone. It's like their step 4 is so non-conclusive and so non-convincing that I'm going to tell you something that'll blow you away. In about 500 years, there's no recorded case of a religious rabbi. I mean, a rabbi was actually religious, a knowledgeable rabbi, ever converting to Christianity. 500 years. You'll find people convert. People don't know much, so then they. But once you know, but there are many, many documented cases of Christian and priests converting to Judaism, including one who's a dear friend of mine in Israel, who is a priest in Germany, and he converted. So what is it about their step 4 that's on shaky ground? So my goal here is not to get into all of Christianity. There's a lot I have to say. I give classes on this. But let me just cut to the chase. Christianity today is not regular, even if Jesus existed, and it's very not clear that he did. I know that may come as a surprise to you, but there's many, many scholars who say that an actual person named Jesus never existed. He was an amalgamation. Most of the stories in the New Testament about him are stories from earlier books, some taken from Torah books. You know, the king wanted to kill all the kids, and therefore the baby had to be hid. That's Moshe. That's exactly the same story as Moshe. A lot of the stories are really just well-known stories from earlier books. But even, let's say, there was a man named Jesus that existed, although there's no archaeological evidence at all that Jesus existed. There's never been found. There have been some false leads, but even if he did exist, that he was a very insignificant person who later on was promoted, but in his lifetime he was a nothing. Today's Christianity is called Pauline Christianity. It's not Christianity the way early Christianity was promoted. There was a great battle between the early church fathers and a fellow by the name of Paul, or Saul of Tarsus, and they totally disagreed with each other. The early Christians actually were regular religious Jews. They kept Shabbos, they studied Talmud, they did everything we did, except they also believed that Jesus was the Messiah. They didn't believe he was the Son of God. That came later. Later on, there was a fellow by the name of Paul, or Saul of Tarsus, who never even met Jesus. He never even met Jesus, and yet he was so influential that he pretty much destroyed the regular Christian church, and all of Christianity today comes from Paul. So Paul is the great prophet of Jesus. If you want to speak to me more about it, I can speak at length about it. If you want to go online and just hear loads about it, I'll give you the name of somebody who is the greatest world scholar on the subject, Jew, Christian alike. There's nobody like him. His name is Tovia Singer, Rabbi Tovia Singer, and you will have the funnest time. Watch him debate online. You're just gonna it's just fun. Anyhow, today's Christianity is Pauline Christianity, and most of the books of the New Testament were actually written by Paul. 8 we know for sure, and perhaps as many as 13. So if Paul didn't meet Jesus, So how did Paul know anything about Jesus? How is he giving over Jesus' word and law? The answer is, ready for this, everyone? He was walking to Damascus and he saw a vision of a face with a crown of thorns. Meaning the step 4 of Christianity is one man's vision walking through a desert. He probably wasn't hydrated properly, and he had a mirage. And all of Christianity, yes, Santa Baby and Easter bunnies and, Holy Night, right? The whole thing is based on the vision of one man who was actually a known liar. Paul is a known liar. He fabricated his resume. He said he was a student of Rabbi Yochanan. He was never a student of Rabbi Yochanan. Like, that's what he used to prop himself up. And that's all Christianity. Pauline Christianity today. The step 4 is one guy's vision on the road to Damascus. Falls. There's nothing there. The emperor has zero clothing. Okay? Now, again, this may sound like, oh boy, rabbis bashing all the religions. That's not politically correct. No, I'm a free agent. I want to know what's truth. You know what? Sometimes when we try to figure out truth, it can ruffle feathers. But I think truth is so important. It's so important. Maimonides, the man, his name is Rambam. The Rambam actually speaks about monotheistic religions like Islam and Christianity, and he says they have a very important purpose in the world. The world cannot be at its complete state unless the world believes in a single creator. There's a really important reason for that. Monotheism equals ethical monotheism. Hard to get into that now, but monotheistic religions, by their very nature, are going to be more humane, because if there's one God, then human beings become the purpose of creation, and then it's on us to be moral. But if there are many gods, then the purpose of the world, the universe, is for the gods, and human beings are glorified animals. So it's a really important point that there are other monotheistic religions in the world. However, this point of finding truth and figuring out, okay, what step 4 passes the test of logic is incredibly important. And it's even more important today. I'll just explain to you why. Because we are so outnumbered in this world. And, I'm a campus rabbi. I was a rabbi at UCLA for many years. There is a very, very, very strong Christian presence on campus. And I've had students who really get confused. They'll have campus crusades for Christ. They'll have the missionaries on campus. When I used to set up shop in UCLA, there was a missionary who always used to plant himself right next to me. And when I would say something, he would try to pull my students away. So in our generation, more so than ever, we have to walk with a little bit of a strut in our step and understand, why do we believe what we believe versus the other options out there, okay? And I don't go around like wagging my finger at other religions, but for myself and for my students, I feel it's very important. And I hope you appreciate how important it is to be able to know why you believe what you believe versus the other options out there. Okay, now we are up to Judaism. What is Judaism's step 4? When the Jewish people left Egypt and we went to a mountain called Mount Sinai, and we stood around the mountain, and God spoke to who? God spoke to the nation. The entire nation. That's the claim. Let's just hold on to the claim a moment. The claim is that God spoke to the entire nation to give the 10 Commandments. Now, how many people were in that nation? So there were between 2.5 and 3 million people at that time. We actually have the numbers pretty clear, because we know it's listed the men who had to go to war, and it's listed every single tribe, every single father of each segment of the tribe, and all the men between 20 and 60 were able to go to war. And then you just extrapolate the same number of women, half the number of children. So it comes out to about 2.5 million. So the claim is 2.5 million people stood around Mount Sinai and heard God speak. Now, there's something, before we even get into how can you verify such a claim, because I'm not going to go back in time, there's something really unique about that claim. And what's unique is that no other religion makes such a claim of a step 4 where the Creator came to more than one of the creations. Maybe a handful, maybe. Usually it's just one. Paul, Joseph Smith, Muhammad. Usually it's the one-to-one. And then they told their disciples, their disciples told their disciples, and eventually you got a lot of people believing. Sometimes it's by force, sometimes it's by sword, sometimes it's convincing through charisma. Judaism is the only religion that actually claims that the step 4 were to millions of people. Now, let me just get into the claim before we try to verify it. Let me explain to you why the claim itself is a bizarre claim. And I'm going to use a thought experiment. I'm in my kitchen one day putting in some microwave popcorn, and God comes to me. Really, like God really comes to me. And he says to me, my name is Benzion. He says, Benzion, I got a new world order, and I want you to promote it. And I want you to convince everyone that you got it right and that you spoke to me. So I'm going to turn to God and I'm going to say, it's 2022. No one's going to believe me. They're going to lock me up. They don't lock people up anymore, but that's the expression, right? They're going to check me into the psych ward, right? Crazy. You think you speak to God? I said, God, what am I supposed to, how am I supposed to prove to them? I know I spoke to you because you're actually God. So God said, what would you like me to do? So I say to God, if you want me to get the word out there, I need a miracle. And I need a miracle that's clearly a miracle. And God said, what kind of miracle you want? So again, thought experiment. I want a school bus, and I want in front of people, I want it to levitate in the air, flip over 50 times in the air, roll over, and then softly land on its wheels. God says, no problemo. I can do that. Okay, this is going to be interesting. The floating yellow school bus. So how many people am I going to get at that event? How many people do I want to see the floating school bus? Do I want 30 people? Do I want 300,000 people? How many people do I want? The answer is as many as I can get. You know why? Because it's really God, and a miracle is really going to happen. Of course, if I was delusional, then I'm going to come there and I'll have egg in my face. But if it really is God, and it's my job to promote his word, I'm going to need everyone to see this, as many people as I can. I'll call all the news stations. I'll call the newspapers. Everyone come, and they may come to mock me, but that's okay. The joke's going to be on them because they'll see how amazing this miracle is. Okay. Experiment number 2. God never came to me, but I want to tell people God did because I'm a little power hungry, or I'm a little maniacal, or I want to, whatever motivation I have. And not only that, since God didn't come to me, I can't ask him to make a bus levitate and spin, but I got some tricks up my sleeve. So I'll take out a few of my best ones. How many people am I going to do my tricks in front of? And the answer is simply in front of a curated audience. Probably not a ton of people because it's a trick, and there'll be some smart people in the audience, and they'll say, oh, that's nothing. They'll put it on YouTube with the explanation. The more people, the more the chance that you're going to be exposed as a fraud. So if I got a curated group, and I do something in front of them, and then they're like, whoa, how did you do that? Wow, do you believe? Spread the word. You saw it with your own eyes. And they spread. And then the word gets out there. It turns out that the equation works like this. Really God, real truth, real miracle, as many as I can get. Not so sure myself. God didn't come to me. I got a little trick. I want to convince people. Keep it small, and then pyramid system it. Shockingly enough, even though the far more convincing claim is that I did it in front of a ton of people, and I can name you their names, I can tell you who they are. Even though that is a much better claim, every religion that's out there except for Judaism does it the way that you would expect a religion that is not based on authenticity does it. They all do it with the pyramid system. Now, I'm just speaking about the claim. I'm not even speaking about how to figure it out. Why wouldn't they claim that, Angel Gabriel came to, 10,000 people, and there were people there, and here are their names, and they were witnessing. You know why? Because such a claim would never hold water. You would be able to debunk it very, very quickly and very easily. So if you're gonna spread the word about a miracle that's not a miracle, you'll get one person or a few disciples, and you'll just get them to spread the word. That's the claim itself. Judaism's claim is quite the opposite. Judaism says, the claim that every single person in the Jewish people had to have been there at the foot of the mountain. No one was allowed to be absent from the mountain, because no one should say, well, I wasn't there. I couldn't make it. The Torah even says something amazing. Listen to this. The Torah even says, those who were blind, Hashem healed them. They were able to see. Those who were lame, I can't make it to the mountain, they're able to walk. Because no one should say that they couldn't make it. And that's why, my friends, hospitals around the world are called Mount Sinai. You ever hear of a Mount Sinai hospital? Mount Sinai Hospital is called Mount Sinai because that's where everyone was healed, because no one was allowed to not be present. So Mount Sinai became synonymous with healing to make sure that everyone is there. That's why they're called Mount Sinai. So the claim is that every single person was there. Now, why is that more powerful? Well, it's simple. If you got a pyramid scheme, then you got one person, few people, many, many, till you have millions. All of the truthfulness or the belief depends on the ground zero person, that first person. And if that person, for whatever reason, whether delusion or whether malice, for whatever reason, if the claim that they claimed didn't happen, then that's the step 4. That's when the Creator tells the creations what the purpose is. It falls apart to pieces. Now, we know that when it comes to religion and truth, you only have 2 choices. Only one got it right or none got it right. Those are your only 2 choices. You cannot have multiple religions getting the truth, because they would have to say the same thing about key moral issues. And there's no religion in the world that lays one on top of the other morally. Either it's jihad or it's murder. It's not both. And that applies to everything within a religion. There are enough contradictions out there. If you want to read a really good book on the subject, there's a book by a woman named Rose Marin called Judaism and Christianity, The Differences, 22 differences. And we think, Judeo-Christian's the same thing. Completely not. Outside of monotheism and certain ethics like don't kill, don't steal, and even in those, there are all sorts of issues. So you either have one got it right or none got it right. And the fact that 1 million or 2 million or 100 million or 200 million or 1 billion Christians believe a certain way doesn't shake my belief. Well, 1 billion people can't be wrong. Well, 1 billion people are Muslim, and they disagree with each other. So either way, 1 billion people got it wrong. Either way, 1 billion. So whether it's Christians or Muslims, either way, 1 billion people got it wrong. And don't forget how many Buddhists live out there in China and beyond. How many Hindus live in India. So we know that the chances are most people got it wrong. Most nations got it wrong. That's not a politically incorrect statement. That's just the reality is that they disagree on moral issues. So does God want A or does God want B? He doesn't want A and B, especially when they contradict each other. So Judaism's claim is that God came to the Jewish people on Mount Sinai and gave them the Torah. 2.5 million people from the word go. And then something amazing happened. God said, okay, listen to me, everyone. Every single year, every parent has to tell every child that this event occurred. That I took you out of Egypt, I split the sea, and I gave you the Torah. Every parent, every child, every year. Every parent, every child, every year. So now instead of a pyramid scheme, you've got millions to millions to millions to millions. When does that occur? Every parent, every child, every year? That's called Passover. That means from the very first year after the event, already parents are saying, remember what happened last year? Remember? And then 20 years, remember what happened 20 years ago? And every parent tells every child every year. And that's where it comes from. Now, I'm gonna make the case a little bit stronger. Let's say Mount Sinai never occurred. Maybe the whole event of the Jewish people hearing from God was invented 1,000 years later. Now, the event of Mount Sinai, according to Judaism, happened 3,333 years ago. Yeah, it's really cool. It's like 11:11. You know, when you look at the clock, it's 11:11. This happens to be, it's not going to be the same as this year for another 1,111 years, right? This year happens to be 3333. It's a really cool year that you are in. But let's say the event didn't happen. Let's say 1,000 years later, a guy made it up. We'll call him Fred because we don't know his name. Right? Because supposedly it was given by God at Mount Sinai. Let's say Fred made it up. Can we play out what would happen if Fred tried to make up such an event? Can we play that out? Okay, watch what's gonna happen. So Fred comes to Michael and says, Michael, how about that God giving the Torah at Sinai and the Red Sea, and he split the sea and and gave us the Torah and all the plagues. And Michael says, Fred, I don't know what you're talking about. I apologize. I don't know what you mean. He said, oh, don't you know? And Fred is very convincing. So Fred convinces Michael, no, these events occurred. And after a few hours, Michael says, wow, that's really interesting. So Michael says, okay, so where is this Torah that God supposedly gave? So Fred knew this question was coming, obviously. It was an obvious question. So he prepared a Torah for Michael to read. So he takes out the Torah and says, right here, you see in black and white, it says in the Torah, God took us out of Egypt, gave us the Torah at Mount Sinai. And Michael is very impressed. Michael says, wow, I guess it must be true, it's in writing. But then Michael reads the following line in the Torah. Ready for this? The line goes like this. Therefore, every parent will tell every child every year, and it will never be forgotten. Yes, those are words in the Torah. Every parent, every child, every year, and it'll never be forgotten. So Michael says, 1 second. My parents never said anything to me. I don't know. Give me a moment. I call my dad. Hey, Dad, you've been holding out on me. You said you didn't tell me about Sinai. You didn't tell me about splitting the sea. And my dad's, I don't know what you're talking about. Ask Grandpa. Grandpa, I don't know what you're talking about. So I come back to Fred and I say, 1 second. The same Torah that you said that had the events in it of us receiving the Torah on Mount Sinai, that same Torah says, therefore every parent will tell every child every year and it will never be forgotten. And I never heard of it. How is that so? Essentially, the Torah has built in a fail-safe. And the fail-safe is, rather than have one figure who goes into a cave or has a vision, who spreads it to disciples, and they all have to rely on the initial person's vision, like Christianity, like Islam, like Mormonism, like Baha'i, like so many others. Rather than that, it has every single Jewish person getting from their parents, who got from their parents, all the way back to Mount Sinai. And it's built in a way that even if a few people were delinquent in telling their children, there are so many who did that it will correct. It's a self-correcting mechanism, because so many people are passing it. So if one chain actually breaks, it right away gets rescued by all the others. That's pretty amazing. How many How many links in that chain? Well, 3333 is about 120 links. That's it. We're not talking about that many. It's about 120 generations going back. That's the Jewish claim. Interestingly enough, Christianity actually says Judaism got it right. They do. They just say we are the New Testament. Islam actually says Judaism and Christianity got it right. As a matter of fact, according to Islam, they call Jesus a prophet. So according to Islam, Judaism and Christianity got it right, but we are the latest and greatest prophecy of God. According to Baha'i, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam got it right, but we are that latest testament. There's only one group that everyone agrees got it right, and that's Judaism. That's bizarre. All historical religions believe that Judaism got it right, even though really it's to the detriment of Christianity to say Judaism got it right. Because if Judaism got it right, there are many, many questions about Jesus that are hard to answer because the New Testament and the Old Testament disagree on so many things. But since the claim of what we call, I'm going to give you the term for it, national revelation, that means God revealing himself to the entire nation, since that claim is so strong, everyone piggybacks on the Jewish national revelation. There was a professor named David Gottlieb, who is a professor of mathematical philosophy at Johns Hopkins University, and he heard this argument, and he said, there's got to be a hole in the argument, and I'm going to find it. And he wrote a big dissertation on national revelation. And today, David Gottlieb is a rabbi in Jerusalem. It was such a convincing argument. Now, there's many, many points that I'm not mentioning here. It could take an entire semester for me to hammer out those points. You could actually find David Gottlieb was one of the smartest people I've ever met in my life. You could go online, put it in the words "living up to the truth." David Gottlieb or David Gottlieb, D-O-V-I-D, Gottlieb, and you can read more about this argument. We're going to end with one just mind-blowing point. Okay, you all hear the argument, right? National revelation to many versus the pyramid system. It's both the Jewish claim and it is the Jewish history, and it's a claim that would be the better claim if you'd be able to back it up. But since other religions can't back it up, they don't make the claim, even though it is the claim that would hold much more water. It would seem like more real, more true, if I can look back and say so many people were able to witness. Someone actually said to me, but what about Jesus feeding the fish to the masses, like 500 people there? The problem with that is we don't know who those people are. So you could say somebody did a miracle in front of 500 people, but you don't know who those people are. So not those 500, the other 500. Part of the point is to have your parents give it to your kids, parents to kids, so we could trace ourselves back. And I'll tell you something that you can believe me or not, but I'm not the only guy who could do it. I could actually trace myself up all 120 generations easily. I could actually go all the way back. Many Jews can, by the way, because since the Jewish people are smaller people, you just have to find some key people that you're related to. So I happen to be a grandchild of the Maharal, who's a very famous person, a very famous writer. And the Maharal did his own tracing back to Rashi. Rashi was a great commentator about 1,000 years ago. Rashi traced himself back up to King David, and we have that line. And King David was before the first temple, so it's very easy to trace ourselves back. So I can go back easily all 120 generations to the advent of Mount Sinai, and so can many, many people who I've met. It's not a difficult thing. So that's another problem with having Fred, because if there was a Fred who invented it, he'd actually be a very historic figure, and we don't have a figure named Fred or any person who sort of unveils Torah from obscurity, and such a person would be a significant figure. Instead, we could trace ourselves straight back up to when the Jews left Egypt. I can do it, and so can many other. But let's look at the last thing, archaeology, okay? Let's just get into archaeology. We're going to end with this. We have a Torah today. How can I trace myself and my religion back to the honesty of national revelation? How do I do that? So here's how to do it. How old is the oldest Torah in existence today? The oldest Torah in existence is 2,000 years old. 2,000 years old. They are known as the Dead Sea Scrolls. They were found in the Qumran by a Bedouin shepherd. Very, very interesting. They were written by a group called the Essenes, who lived in Israel, and they were during the Bar Kokhba revolt. So going back 2,000 years. So Fred could not have existed within 2,000 years because Torahs were well known at that point. So I can go back 2,000 years. But, listen carefully, I could actually go back another 1,000 years because that's 2,000 years. That was the end of the Second Temple. But we have remnants, archaeology, writings from both temple periods. Both temple periods, first temple that was destroyed by the Babylonians, and the second temple that was destroyed by the Romans. We have measurements, as said in the Torah, that have been measured like the base of Temple Mount. So archaeology, we have going all the way back to First Temple period and the beginning of First Temple period. We have what's called a stele, which is an embossment from Sancheriv, who is the king of Assyria, who exiled the Jews during the First Temple period. We have the whole, in the Israel Museum, the whole stele is there. We can literally go back another 1,000 years with the veracity of the Torah. So you know what you're talking about over here? You're talking about 3,500 years where Fred would have to live to create a Torah. Because we know the Torah was a living document for the past 3,000 years. But you don't even have 300 years. You don't, because there's archaeological evidence to Mishkan Shiloh. Mishkan Shiloh was the temple that existed before the permanent temple. There is that exists. There are steles of pharaohs who went in to fight the Jewish people, and he mentions about the Jewish Torah. There's the Teldon stone, which mentions King David, again predating First Temple period. You would literally have to make up the entire Jewish religion 200 years at most. But you don't even have 200 years. You know why? Because the first 100 years, the people were actually at the event itself, or their parents were, or their grandparents were. So you're not going to tell somebody, hey, remember what Grandpa saw? I never heard Grandpa say that. So the first 100 years, the guys would have still been alive. So you have about 100 years to convince an entire nation that they received a Torah, hearing God speak, which included things like circumcision, which you could be sure they weren't all that excited about doing, laws of sexuality, which also there was some pushback about, 613 commandments with tons of history. When religions evolve, and especially when it goes from parent to child, if the event didn't happen and there was a Fred, you're never going to have that. It's never going to happen. It's a very, very short amount of time. And the truth of the matter is that we actually have archaeological evidence that goes back to Mount Sinai and even pre-Mount Sinai. If you want to do more research into this, you could look up the Ipuwer papyrus, which is a papyrus that the Egyptians wrote that describe the 10 plagues in the Egyptians' accounting. There were the bones that were found when Joshua on the two mountains, Gerizim and Abel, the bones of the sacrifices were found. That was literally at the time Joshua was there during national revelation. We can really go back all the way. So as far as a historical religion goes, there's a reason that Jewish people didn't convert. There's a reason that we said, we believe, and you may torture us, you may even crucify us, you may try to kill us to change, but we're not gonna, because we can't live a life that we believe is not true. And if I have to rely on one guy's vision on the road to Damascus, I'd rather believe in no religion at all than to believe in some guy's vision. If my parents tell me, and their parents tell them, and even if my parents don't understand the implication of a Passover Seder, they may not understand the ramifications, but it's still been transmitted faithfully. It's a very powerful argument that I'm presenting. The national revelation it's such a powerful argument. It's what Judaism rests on. So God existing, that was last week. This week, how do we know Judaism got it right? Philosophical religions, no claim to historical truth. Historical religions, pyramid scheme relying on one person. The one exception is Judaism. The claim itself is astonishing. It's an extraordinary claim. History backs it up, and even other historical religions piggyback on your Judaism. Powerful stuff, very powerful. So I guess that's the end of the presentation. Thank you all for coming. It's been a real pleasure.